Excellent. Great to catch up with you again, Yusuf. These are very interesting times, and I think it's been about a year, plus over a year now, since we started getting very excited about generative AI. And obviously, Accenture has invested substantially to develop enterprise level use cases. I hear about Gen AI at scale a lot. But starting this year, how do you see things evolving and developing? Very interested as well in where you're seeing the engagement come from. Is it all IT, or are you seeing a lot of interest from non-IT? But if you can give us a level set on where the business is and how you see this year shaping up.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think it was almost a year ago we were sitting on stage together, Phil, in New York, and we were all still trying to unpack, I think, this notion of generative AI that it kind of, was building for a long time, but had really sort of hit the scene, if you will, with a lot of enterprise excitement and interest. And as at Accenture, we lean into technology. We lean in very hard on new technology that can help solve business problems. This one is particularly interesting and exciting. And as you know, we've made we announced a $3 billion investment. We are moving from proof of concepts and pilots and ideas into scale and really getting, some meaningful results out of generative AI. To answer your question, certainly there's a lot of interest from technology organizations, and certainly there's a number of technology organizations that have ownership or responsibility for driving generative AI in the enterprise. But certainly, the real attention that's been captured has been by business leaders and by business executives who I think can see the real power in how this can drive change and how this can meaningfully move up the value curve for the enterprise.
Right, right. Yeah, we talked a lot when we last spoke about this sort of AI automation continuum. If you like to take your clients through, how do you see that evolving? Has this sort of AI-driven automation conversation changed? Is it driving different roles within yourselves and your clients? How is that evolving?
Look, as you know, for decades, we've always sort of been on this continuous evolution of how do you drive more productivity within the enterprise? How do you drive more productivity out of the operations that we deliver for our clients? And for at least the last 15 years or so, there's been a aggressive automation journey, basic automation, RPA, to AI as we sort of all knew it over the last several years, now to this notion of generative AI. And while generative AI has captured a lot of attention and it's become, a bit of a catalyst, if you will, for, driving more automation in the enterprise, we're really seeing it as an opportunity now to talk about that full automation continuum and spectrum. In our Accenture operations business, where we have about 215,000 people serving our clients, executing business processes on their behalf every day. So, that notion of being able to constantly, drive productivity, drive automation, leverage AI to drive better business outcomes has always been there. Generative AI has really put that, a little bit on a faster path.
Right.
Both an ability to achieve a bit more productivity, but also to pull in the time to achieve some of that productivity. And it's really ignited the right conversations.
Yeah, I mean, pivoting to Gen AI really does seem to be something that's come naturally to Accenture, right? That for most of your diamond clients, and they may be more from traditional industry sectors. Is this less of a technological shift, more of a cultural shift for them? And how are you enabling the shift for them as well?
I love your question because in every client I talk to, everywhere I go, it's really sparked a conversation about moving to a culture of innovation. You see business leaders at the table together with technology leaders. They're talking about solving business problems in a very different way because, again, this thing has captured the imagination of what could be possible. And it really is driving these conversations that, to me, are about a culture of innovation. How do you knock down silos within the organization? And in order to really take advantage of these technologies, you've got to have different functional areas working much closer together. How do you put data at the center of everything that you're doing? Because in order to take advantage again of these technologies, you've got to be data led. How do you foster a culture of continuous learning? And you see executives at all levels and their teams much more intellectually curious about the technology and what it can do, and therefore what new skills do they need to develop. So I think you're right. I think regardless of industry, regardless of size of enterprise, it really is driving a bit of a cultural revolution to be one more of innovation, to be one more of a collaborative sense of enterprise, to be one more that's data led, and to be one that's about constantly learning.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, data. Companies, many of them are only halfway through a cloud migration journey, and now we're asking them to prep data assets for Gen AI. So when it comes to data modernization, do we shout fire in a crowded theater? I mean, what is the plan here?
Look, there's no shortcut on this, right? As you and I both know, and what cloud has given us, and even before that, well, there's no shortage of data. So data proliferation across enterprises. As we talk to our clients, our latest research tells us that only 25% of companies out there are really realizing the potential, the full potential of the data that they have. So three-quarters of companies tell us that they don't feel like they're really realizing the potential of their data. And only 55%, roughly half, tell us they can even trace the data from source to consumption point. So obviously, there's a lot still to be done when it comes to data. And you mentioned cloud, but as we talk about enterprise reinvention, we start with building your digital core. Your digital core is all about being able to put that data in a place where it then becomes consumable and usable to you. Then you've got to secure it, and then as we talked about before, as an enterprise, you've got to be data led in your decision making, data led in your process engineering, and that then unlocks the potential of all this technology.
Yeah, and then obviously coming from a process operational standpoint, how do you see that playing in? I mean, processes are still there, many are still antiquated, they've been around for decades, right? How do we reimagine process to play into this broader Gen AI conversation to really make this all work?
It's a great question. I think this is one of the greatest opportunities we have in front of us. If you think about how transformation has typically and historically worked inside most enterprises, you start with something, you start with sort of a strategic frame. You look at and you build operating models, you rewrite business processes to match those operating models and execute that strategy. And then typically you put in systems to be able to then drive efficiency against those processes. And it's um, even if not waterfall, it's oftentimes a serial process that you've got to do the process before you can do the other stuff. The beauty of this technology is that it's much more, we're finding, of a sort of virtuous and continuous cycle. That if you're using the generative AI correctly, if you're using AI and tech correctly, it is informing you, it is proactively telling you about your process inefficiencies, about your process gaps, about trapped value that sits between processes in the enterprise. And
Well,
so leveraging that tech to inform process change that should happen. And as you get that process change, then seeing from the tech the value that you're creating, it's much more of a continuous reinvention. It's much more of a continuous change. And it's much more of the tech and the process and the people working in tandem versus working in a serial mode.
I think that's a very good way of putting it. So what do you think we'll be talking about in the beginning of next year? Do you think we'll still be talking about Gen AI, or it's going to evolve into a broader value
Look, I
conversation?
wish, I could predict it. I didn't when you and I were sitting here a year ago. I wasn't, I probably couldn't have predicted we'd be this far along as far as we've come. But I do think generative AI is one of these things. As you sort of look at the evolution of technology, that the promise is real. If you look at uh, where we've really been able to capture value so far, it's in just a handful of functions, things that are customer facing, marketing, sales, customer service have had use cases that are quite ripe for generative AI. There are other enterprise processes and industry specific processes where we're also able to leverage generative AI, but I think there's a lot still to come. And so, what I think we'll be talking about, Phil, what I hope we'll be talking about is the more pervasive nature across the enterprise and the ability to get into deep industry specific processes to really reimagine and reinvent those processes going forward.
Yeah, becoming much more embedded in the enterprise. Well, this has been wonderful. Lovely to catch up again, Yusuf, and I look forward to sharing this interview with our network and our friends in the industry.
Excellent. Always good to
All
talk
right.
to you too, and hope to see you soon.